This is your sign to leave your guilt behind and embark on a personal journey of self-forgiveness and self-love. Probably don't expect that from a guy that looks like me, talks like me, but I am one guilty motherfucker. I have fucked up more than I care to admit, which is ironic because I just finished having a therapy session and we tried to get to the bottom of my approach avoidance. And it turns out the reason why I procrastinate and fuck up so much is because I'm actively trying to avoid fucking up, which is the biggest mistake you can make because we're human. We're going to make mistakes. But I feel so guilty about procrastinating things and pushing things off and never doing something, even the simplest task, even the easiest task, easier than putting your clothes away. I will procrastinate it and avoid it until something gives, something breaks, something snaps. And then I'm stuck in this cycle, this reverberation, this mess, this web of shame and pain when I could have just did the thing and killed the monster while it was small. I am the king of procrastinating. I have a 10th degree black belt in putting things off. And with that comes a lot of guilt. And my doctor tells me that I'm having trouble losing weight because of all the stress that my body's under. I walk 20,000 steps a day, and calorically, I'm in a deficit, but my body's just holding on to everything that it possibly can because it's in a state of perpetual stress and concern. And a lot of it, most of it comes from guilt, comes from the mistakes that I've made 5 years ago that I've been punishing myself for longer than I deserve. Like, my self-punishment is way worse than any crime that my mind thinks it's committed to myself, no less. So the first step in leaving your guilt behind is first, acknowledge your mistakes. Take a moment and reflect on the actions and choices you've made that have led to feeling guilt. Accept that responsibility for your actions. Acknowledge your mistakes. And that's the first step of letting it go. I have fucked up. I have made mistakes. I've let people down. And that's what hurts the most, is letting people down. Especially those that I love and respect, and those that hold me accountable. When I let them down, I beat myself up for it again and again and again and again. Which leads me to the second step in leaving your guilt behind. Learn from your mistakes. Collect that data and write it down, and use your list of what you've learned from these mistakes and utilize that as leverage against your future. Use past actions as valuable learning experiences and take time to reflect what went wrong and why. Don't spend too much time in your head, but write it down and get it out of your head and understand the lessons that could be derived from those mistakes and how you can avoid making similar ones in the future. That's paramount. Thirdly, practice self-forgiveness. The quicker that you can get to forgiving yourself, the faster you can be free from that concern, that shame, that pain, that guilt, and the quicker you can let it go. 2023 for me was about letting go. An aggregate of mistakes that I made, fuck-ups and failures, and I had to recognize what each and every single one of those were, recognize that I was punishing myself far more than what the crime warranted. My punishment did not, totally exceeded the crime, so to speak. I'm using these words which sound melodramatic, but this is just the way it feels when you're in your head and in your feelings. And it was like carrying a whole extra body, like they say, it's like a monkey on your back. It was like carrying a fucking just dead weight. And I had to let these things go just 1 pound at a time. And before I knew it, the faster I forgave myself, the lighter I was, the further I could go, the stronger I felt. I'm not going to live in denial and say these things didn't happen and I wasn't responsible for fucking up. Some things are out of my control and some things are totally in my control. But I let these things go and I was 100 pounds lighter. And it felt like something close to flying, truly. So practice self-forgiveness. Forgive yourself for the mistakes you've made. And remember that everyone makes them. It's part of being human. Treat yourself with kindness and compassion if you can. If that's something that you are into, be a little kind to yourself, because I promise you, your biggest enemy that causes the most harm to you is probably you, if you're anything like me. So understand that holding on to guilt only hinders your progress and prevents you from embracing a positive future. Allow yourself to let go, accept your imperfections, and move on with self-love. Because if you can do that, you can do anything. The fourth thing that you can do to leave your guilt behind, and this is going to sound a little 12-steppy, but seek forgiveness from others. If your guilt involves hurting someone else, it's important to apologize sincerely and make amends if possible. And if you can't make amends, go back to step 3 and forgive yourself, because sometimes closure means forgiving yourself and accepting that you can't have closure, accepting that you can't make those amends. But try. Pick up the phone. Make that phone call. Text that person with the intent to make amends and take ownership and accountability of the pain that you may have caused them, even if you didn't mean to, even if it was an accident, even if you're not super sure what you did or didn't do. Boy, will you feel 100 pounds lighter. So remember to show genuine remorse, because holding on to that guilt is only going to prevent you from embracing a positive future. And I think that's the best way to demonstrate your growth and maturity, is by making those amends and fixing those bridges while you still can, while motherfuckers are still alive. And finally, and this is the hardest one, especially for me as someone who worries, and they say if you worry, then you're stuck in the past. And if you're stressed, you're stuck in the future, something like that. If you're anxious, you're stuck in the future. But if you can focus on the present instead of dwelling on your past mistakes and living in your head, and if you can shift your attention to a present moment, only then can you move forward. So focus on the present. Make goals for yourself. Raise your standards. Embrace the power of now. And if you remember that letting go of guilt is a process, and it takes time and it doesn't happen overnight, if you can just show yourself some patience and celebrate and commit to baby steps, I think that you'll figure it out. But I want to tell you that you deserve to live free from guilt and this burden that you've put on yourself. This is your sign to leave your guilt behind.